All right, here we are. Welcome to the show. AI mistakes today. Is it cheating to use AI? AI in the classroom? I don't know. I think there's some questions we need to talk about here. There's probably a little bit of conversation that's necessary. The kids are back in school now, at least mine are, for a couple of weeks, and already we're off to a start talking about AI in the classroom. And this one is really interesting to me because obviously I have a very strong opinion about what should be in place. I am using AI all over the place. I have a channel where I talk about the use of AI, but did you know that 56% of educators expect AI use to increase? I know it's kind of a startling statistic. I'm not sure what concerns me more, the fact that it's a majority or that there's still 44% that don't think it's going to be used increasingly in their school environment. And I think we need to talk about this in greater detail because there are good things and there are also bad things that we need to explore in this area. Really, when we're talking about the use of AI in the classroom, it has some important details that matter. In fact, when we talk about technology, one of the things that I like to tell people, and it's a quote derived over time, but really, technology is neither good nor bad. It's how we use it, it's the person that uses it that makes it so. So I want to begin with this idea that, well, first of all, it's not the tool or the use of the tool that makes it cheating. It is, in fact, the way that we apply the use of a tool to do anything. I think it's pretty commonplace already that people are using this at work. So it's pretty obvious to me that this is going to be a tool that people will need to use. In fact, I've been saying it here for many months. This is a skill that you must have to remain effective. And if you can do that, it can really change your life in dramatic ways. I don't think that using AI in the classroom is a mistake. And I want to focus the lens in a slightly different way than just it's using AI. I want to start with a story. It's been quite a number of years since I was a school kid, and I had the benefit of the use of a calculator in some of my classes. But I have a very distinct memory of an interaction I had with my Algebra 2 teacher as a sophomore in high school. And I really enjoyed using the calculator. In fact, one of the things I did with the calculator a lot was write programs because I could have the calculator do the work for me. And I liked to do programming. It was something that I enjoyed. It was fun for me to take the mathematical concepts and turn it into a set of functions that would spit out the number, the answer to the question. And I would argue that understanding a problem well enough to write a program from scratch is an indication that you kind of understand the concepts or the principles behind what's being built. But the interaction I had with the teacher effectively boiled down to this. When I exclaimed that the calculator was something that I had spent time to develop and enable for myself to use, her response to me was, and I quote, "What are you going to carry a calculator around in your pocket with you everywhere you go?" Well, obviously, I couldn't defend that statement at the time, and it was her classroom, and the teacher gets to set the rules, whether you like it or not. But the thing is, yeah, I kind of do carry a calculator around in my pocket with me all the time. And actually, I do use it as a calculator from time to time, quite frequently. Though, admittedly, most oftenly, it's in the form of an app that does the calculation for me using a program that someone put together. The reality is that that story, that conversation has not fundamentally changed in the 20 some years since I had it. And the discussion about the calculator was not the first time there was a discussion about a tool being appropriate for use in the classroom. Now, there are guides and statements that people use throughout their lives to govern, control, or otherwise help them navigate the complex world that we live in. And I submit to you, I stole this quote from an article, which I'll share with you a little bit later in the broadcast. I really like this quote from W.B. Yeats. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. And I will tell you personally that I think AI has ignited a fire for me. I get excited about this stuff because I think it's transformative. I think it's incredibly valuable. And honestly, I don't think it's cheating. Why do I not think it's cheating? Because ultimately, in the business world, it's about creating value. And if you can do that with the tool that helps you illustrate your thinking and get the job done more efficiently, then you should be using that tool. In fact, I think it's a mistake if you're not using that tool. But there are rules that we have to put in place. There are things we need to talk about. It's not simply, did you write a paper with the AI? No, it's how did you engage your brain? How did you light the fire? How did you accomplish that task or do something better through the use of a tool? Because we already know from previous discussions and explorations that we've done right here with AI mistakes, there are right and wrong ways to use AI, and you can absolutely use it the wrong way and make no progress. In fact, there are some discussions and studies that have shown that the use of AI can actually lead to worse outcomes, not better. So, how should we be thinking about the use of AI in the classroom? Well, I want to start with the benefits. When we talk about the use of AI, it can help us accomplish the things that we need to accomplish in a shorter period of time, and particularly by shortening the learning curve. See, we all learn things in different ways. In fact, what colors our ability to learn is our own experiences. And so I might have had an experience that I can leverage and understand an advanced concept more easily by relating it to another concept. But that's not true for you because you've not had the same experiences that I have had. And I think that what we're going to see in the not too distant future, if we're not seeing it already in some cases, is that the personalization of learning is a tremendous benefit. I have been able to absorb new concepts and knowledge at a pace that I never thought would be possible. In fact, when we talk about things like having founded AI mistakes, I use AI in all kinds of interesting ways. What it does for me is lead to clarity of thought. I can actually get through a concept much more rapidly. I can learn much more easily by relating it to the things that I know and asking questions. I can have it explain a concept to me. And if I think there's a related concept, I can actually, in the chat session, say, I know about this other thing. Is there any way that that could help me better understand this topic? And so in education, actually, what we found in the learning process is the sooner you can relate something new to something you already know, the faster you can understand that concept. Now, I'm not an expert at learning people's names when I meet them in conversation, but I can tell you that a very useful trick for me is when I meet a person, if they have a name that is familiar to me, I try to, in some way, shape, or form, associate that new person with the person I already know. It's much more easy for me to remember those things than it is to, out of the blue, remember that person's name. You may think that's a cheat. I call it a skill. And I think it adds value because people value their name. They want to be called by their name. That's what they're used to. That's what we all like. And so if you can do that more easily with a trick, you should use that trick. Now, the benefits for AI extend well beyond the ability to learn. Actually, there's a lot of benefits to the administrative part of school. You can use AI in all sorts of ways to predict behaviors, understand the needs of the community, help the educators get their work done. In fact, one of my favorite tricks that I talked with a teacher friend of mine was actually being able to create lesson plans using the power of AI. You can use something that that classroom of students is already familiar with to illustrate another concept. There again is that idea of familiarity and leveraging that. In fact, The way that these AI models actually work is by creating what's called a vector space that has so many dimensions that honestly, it's kind of hard for a human to even comprehend it. But using those vectors, those numbers, assigning values to words and ideas that allow you to quickly jump between them. So, being able to relate ideas from one to the next is actually how all of this intelligence is even possible. Now, when we talk about the needs of individual students, there are also a huge diversity of capabilities, abilities, and talents. Not every student learns at the same pace, and that is boiled down to a lot of different factors. But what we really want to do as a society, I think, is enable everyone to perform at their maximum level, whatever that is, not hold them back, not restrain them, unlock their ability to learn and deliver and create. Those are all really important things to me. And we all have different levels of accessibility. We can use AI to accommodate some of those needs. And maybe in some cases, that is using AI in a cyborg kind of way, where it's very difficult to separate the use of artificial intelligence from the contribution that the human makes. And I think this is something that we're going to be looking at increasingly. We've already become familiar with the concept of deep fakes, people trying to create false situations or build false reality so that people will buy into whatever their idea is or the path that they want to lead them down. We're going to have to learn how to discern and understand what is real, what is salient, what is valuable. It being presented on a page is simply not enough. In fact, I whipped up this presentation for you in a few hours tonight. Who's to say that any of this is right, especially if I used a large language model to do it? But it's more than just it came out of a large language model with the use of sources. I spent time to think about it and weigh it. In fact, I've been thinking about this problem quite a lot because it came up when my kids went to school this year. In fact, multiple teachers at both of my children's schools actually brought up this AI thing and how it has implications for learning and is it appropriate to use in the classroom and what they intend to do about the use of AI in the classroom, that they simply do not wish for AI to be in the classroom at all. And I have some fundamental objections to that. And probably the biggest is, once again, we have this issue of helping people learn, because the reality is, while kids go to school to learn, that is not the only place that they learn. And teachers are different, teachers are unique. And the kids that are assigned to their teachers in school aren't there because there's been some sort of profiling or determination of every student's need, and they're put in that classroom simply because that's the teacher they most need. No, there are other variables that have to be considered. Even if we had AI that could pick out and choose the right classroom for each and every student, it wouldn't be possible because you can't put a different number of kids in one classroom versus another, because there are rules and requirements that are bound against that school district. In fact, even the dollars that some school districts spend are limited by the population or the demographics or the location. There are lots of factors that determine what that teacher student scenario actually looks like. And the only way to even it out for everyone is to open up and enable people to learn using what they need, tying them to the principles, using tutoring to help them identify exactly what it is that they need to learn. Now, personalized learning and affordable tutoring, those two things go hand in hand. But when we look at the cost of building an application with a large language model that actually does this work, all things considered, it's an incredibly cheap tutor. I mean, I have multiple tools I use for AI, and generally speaking, it's 20 bucks a month for whatever the solution is. $20 a month for a tutor is pretty darn amazing. Now, the good news is it may not even have to be tutoring, because some teachers are using the technology. And I think this is a really valuable part of the conversation. And I want to talk through that just a little bit. And I want to jump over to Twitter. Well, it's X now. And there's a fellow that I follow on X that I really value his perspective. And he shared some really great details. And this is one that I want to call out because it's difficult to detect AI. And we'll talk about this more next. But I want to talk about the benefits. I want to talk about what the things are that you should do instead. And what he points out here in this reference is that there are actually ways that we can organize the educational process for the students and allow the examination of students' understanding of a topic in a dynamic environment by giving tests. Look, nobody really enjoyed the quiz, the pop quiz that the teachers would hand out, but you have to assess their knowledge in some way, shape, or form. And doing that in a classroom format really is the best opportunity to do that. But it's not just about doing the assessments, it's about thinking through what each of those students really needs. There are many, many folks that are out there trying to figure out how to do this the right way. And Holly Clark, who is obviously doing a lot of work producing content and helping other people learn how to use AI in the classroom, actually took this idea to the next level. Instead of trying to catch her students using AI, what she did instead was bring it into the classroom and actually have the students work with the tool. And she was having a deep conversation with them on a regular basis to understand what kind of realizations did they have through the use of these AI tools. How was their work different because they used AI to help them do writing? There are many different ways that we can use these tools, and I will highlight and share with you in the notes for the video a number of different ways that you can actually leverage these tools and free education being put together by people that are just like you, doing education, trying to help and figure out exactly how to solve this problem. This individual, Miss D. Cox, has a doc that she's put together that is pages of resources that are there to help in AI education. And I think these are really valuable things that can be done. We can help each other do this the right way, improve the learning experience for students, and everybody comes out ahead. That is how we should be using these tools. But we have to now talk about the downside. You see, not everything is a benefit. We have some challenges. We have some difficulties that we have to overcome. There is this problem of cheating. And look, learning can be a challenge, right? It is real work to learn something new. And we sometimes resist that process because it's not fun, or because we get lazy, or we just simply aren't in the mood to do it at the time. And that means that we're going to have individuals that need to be learning that are going to use these tools to get around that process. Now, in my day, it was academic dishonesty by copying, cheating, or otherwise getting the answers to a test before the test was given to you. That was a way to circumvent the sharing or acquisition of the knowledge that was intended to be acquired. And anytime you use an indicator to determine whether or not something is true, you have some triangulation. We try to find ways to get around the problem. But I think we all understand that the learning is the most important thing to happen. And so we have to identify ways that we can magnify did the student learn the content? Does the student understand how to use this or apply it and turn it into something that is valuable for them? Going back to the Yates quote, right? How do we light the fire instead of just fill the bucket? Because in this day and age, there is an overwhelming amount of information and it doesn't slow down. In fact, the creation of information is only accelerating in part because of these tools. Every year for the past, really, since the computer was created, we've increased the amount of knowledge that's available by orders of magnitude every year. It is growing exponentially. And that creates another problem because all of that information that's being created, if a human being generated it, or in fact, if a large language model generated it, there is bias involved and likely censorship. I mean, we have a free society here in my country, the United States of America, but we are having a dialogue. In fact, even the news today is about, are we letting information go where it needs to go? Is there manipulation that's happening in the background? And the reality is, yeah, depending on the source of the information, it is biased. It is colored by the person that is giving you that information. I really believe that the human experience is biased, but it's colored by our own experiences. Is that a good thing? It's how you use it that matters. It's what you do with the information and how you work with your fellow human that really matters. We have to consider that, right? Consider the source of the information. There are studies that are conducted all the time. I've even referenced them. Consider the source, right? When a freelance website comes out and says that AI tools are making things worse, is that biased? Well, yeah, they have a marketplace. Their entire existence is based upon human beings engaging other human beings to get work done. Does the use of AI affect their marketplace? You bet it does. People completing the work are using AI, and people are not coming to order the work because they can use AI to do the work instead. So, is that study truthful? Well, it might be. It might also be cherry picked. We have to be absolutely far more critical about what we read and what we think. In fact, one of the challenges of AI is that we're going to have to be a lot more careful about what we trust and where we get information from. But we can actually use AI to help us with that in multiple different ways. I use it as a second opinion all the time. When I write a social media post, I'm going to one or more large language models and asking for that content to be critiqued. Why? Because it makes my writing better. It gets me thinking about, what are you trying to achieve? What's the goal? Are you communicating the message that you want to send? That's really valuable. And that's going to challenge all of us to level up our game. Because if I'm using the tool to make my posts better and you're out there trying to write your posts without the help of AI, what are the chances that my posts are going to be better? Not because I have a better skill at it, but simply because I'm using the tools at my disposal to help with that challenge. But also, that is another point that we need to talk about, because as you use the tool more, it is absolutely possible for you to disengage your brain. You can over rely on the technology. In fact, we know about this. This is not a new problem. And again, I've talked about it on the channel before. There's a book called The Glass Cage written by Nicholas Carr, and he talks about all of the ways that automation in the cockpit affected the safety of airline transportation. What they discovered was that policies that required the pilots to engage the autopilot for efficiency also led to their skills being impacted. See, it turns out when you're not engaging your brain, when you're not using your skills, they're getting worse. And we call that idea in the physics terminology entropy, right? Every system is degrading over time. You have to do something external to reverse that process and turn it around. So if you bring AI into the classroom and you give a student AI to help them write a paper, if they have to sit down with pen and paper and write something, it's going to be harder. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it depends, right? They need to be able to do both. And that's where we go back to the tooling, right? What can you do in the classroom, both with and without the AI? Help them use that as a tool set to improve their ability to write effectively and to communicate or to do research to be more effective. There's all sorts of information that is available. I mean, I had to go to the library in college. The internet existed, but most of the resources I needed for the papers I wrote, they weren't there. I had to go to the library and actually touch books. By and large, that's not the case anymore, and computers help us. I mean, you wouldn't choose to not use Google today when you were searching the internet. I mean, if I said you had to go back to using Yahoo, well, the Yahoo is different today, but in the origins of the internet, Yahoo was a phone book, right? It didn't index the data that was out there. Google had to come and create that. It was an entirely new process. But you'd be crazy not to use a search engine today. And having used the latest in AI search capabilities, I think you're crazy to use Google now without the power of AI. We're going to keep talking about that because research is absolutely a killer application of AI. It helps us to do better research and have better results after we've conducted that research. But that also means that there is more and more information that's out there. And the challenge there is, how do you make sure that your information is not being abused? When it comes to students using AI in the classroom, there are absolutely things that we have to be careful of. I would not advocate for every student just going to sign directly into ChatGPT. There are things to consider, right? The custody of that data by those search engines, you may or may not be able to control what they do with the information that you type in. We know that kids need to be trained on how to use the internet, and the use of AI, of course, also has major implications to that. Now, these are technology problems that can be solved. It is simply something that we need to be aware of and pay attention to as we are developing these solutions and bringing them into the classroom, which I do believe is the right thing to do. And part of those challenges I have to call out because uh, I really believe this is a problem. There are organizations out there that are telling our teachers that AI can be detected, that they can use a tool, and that using a tool is going to solve the problem. And if we can just catch those cheating kids, our problems are over. No, no, that's not the case at all. In fact, the biggest problem that we have is even the companies that are providing solutions to catch cheating, to detect AI, have admitted that it is absolutely possible that a student that writes a paper could have it scanned by a so-called AI detection engine, and it gets detected as AI, even though all of that content came out of their brain. To me, that is an unconscionable outcome. We're talking about a student that did the work, and now the teacher is laying out the accusation that they cheated. This is not good for anyone involved. And if you search the internet a little bit, you'll find stories like these all over the place. This person got an email from their professor accusing them of having used AI. In fact, 100%. And we know in this case, this student is aware of a company called Turnitin that actually checks for academic dishonesty. They make a business out of detecting plagiarism and identifying if a student is turning in a paper that was produced somewhere else. And this person is trying to figure out what to do. Legitimately did not write it with AI, legitimately checked it and found there's nothing here. But because the professor had a tool that said it was AI generated, now we have a problem. This is not good, people. There is no scenario where there's a good outcome from this because the student laying an accusation against the professor isn't going to go anywhere. The professor has the power here. What can you do as a student in this situation other than go directly to the dean of schools and try to work out a deal? This is not a good situation. Here's a great example. In this newsletter that I found through a search, it turns out that there's a professor here that's talking about educators being worried about AI. Now, this is last year in September, so it is dated from an AI perspective. It's a few months old. But what concerns me is this statement: it's possible to identify AI generated student work. But here's the thing: if you actually read the article, They straight up say it. There's no surefire way to do this. There is no surefire way to identify text is generated by AI. It is not possible. Every system for detection has flaws. So here is my position on this. Okay? And I'm saying this straight up. AI detectors do not work. If you are a teacher and you are using an AI detector, go ahead, use it. Supplement your information. I mean, maybe it gets better over time and there are legitimate ways to do that. I understand that many of them work by the use of detecting copy and paste. And sure, you could detect that, but I can tell you as a programmer, that's not going to solve your problem. I can write a script right now that can take text from any website in the known universe and translate that back into typed text, pasted as text. And it looks like I'm typing it out. I could even write an algorithm that makes it look like it took me 4 hours to write the paper. And see, that's exactly the problem. Any mechanism can be defeated. Nothing is foolproof. And if the concern is academic dishonesty, well, you don't need AI to be academically dishonest. And there are no set of tools in the world that can solve the detection of all of those academic dishonesty math. It's just not possible. And if you're using this to work with your students, you might as well just flip a coin because it's going to be more reliable. In fact, every number I could find shows that it's basically 50-50 in both directions, right? False positives and false negatives. I can write with AI at any grade level using the right prompts. Yes, it's possible to do that. Now, do the students know that? Well, if you're in a gifted and talented program, they can figure a lot of things out. If they're not, they just need a good friend to show them how to do it. I mean, look, most of kids at school have siblings, right? You don't know if you have the older or the younger unless you've had the conversation with the kid, or maybe you had their sibling in a class generation prior to theirs. But look, if you've got a fourth grader and an eighth grader, the fourth grader is going to learn things from the eighth grader. So if the eighth grader knows how to use AI in class and there's a way for them to give that to their sibling, that's probably going to happen. You cannot prevent that from happening. AI detection is just not reliable. It's not reliable. You shouldn't do it. And if you're using a tool like Turnitin, you need to be talking to the company about the way that they are promising things to happen because it's just not realistic. And we have teacher federations, we have educational organizations that have decided that it's possible to use these tools to detect AI, and it's just not realistic. In fact, there's even been discussions with organizations like OpenAI. OpenAI has an education edition of ChatGPT to kind of control this. I use Grammarly a lot. Grammarly has an edition that's for use by students and teachers. Yes, you can augment that experience. You can put some controls in place. You can govern the experience, but you're not going to totally prevent it. And if you come into the classroom and you are telling your students that you can detect AI, you can't be sure how that's coming across to the student. And the reality is, if you can't light the fire, we have a bigger problem. I think that's probably a challenge because it's entirely based on the student. But the reality is, I believe that our teachers have an impact on our kids in ways that we can't possibly imagine. And I got to tell you, I just don't think that beating them over the head, waving an AI detector in their face is really going to help them. That's not the way to do it. So my plea to you, if you're an educator watching this, find another way. There are so many ways that we can use AI, and AI detectors are not the way to do that. In fact, if you turn it around, like the lady we saw a few moments ago explaining how she was using it, you can actually accelerate their learning. They'll come out with better results. You get to have a deeper relationship with those students and understand what they're thinking, and everybody comes out of it ahead. There are so many tools around that we can use to make this a better story. There are courses that are made freely available. There's no reason that we can't do a better job of this for our kids. And that really is what this is all about. And that's the takeaway that I want to call out as we go forward. What can we do? Right? What are the actions that we must take going forward to make this the best possible story for everyone that's involved? If you are a school administrator, policies and guidelines. Don't make your teachers guess about this. Get an expert. Yeah, AI experts are everywhere. But you know what? I bet you have AI expert parents. I bet if the school district put out and said, hey, we're trying to figure out what the policy is going to be for AI, let's hear from you. I bet you'd get quite some results on both sides. And I think that that's good. Let's have this conversation as a community. Let's lay down the rules so the students understand what's at stake, so that we understand what's going to happen. What is the process? If a teacher accuses a student, what do we do? Who makes the ruling? Who gets to decide what really happened, right? I hope there's at least a teacher conference involved. But also, there's free training. Like, there's no excuse, right? It is a matter of giving the teacher community the time to absorb the education materials that are freely available. That is 100% possible. I realize that teachers do a ton of work, and much of it is time that is spent outside, well beyond the classroom time that they're strictly paid for. But we can solve this. Come on, let's get to work. We can do this. And most importantly, I just really want to reiterate this idea that fostering critical thinking and creativity is probably the most important thing that we can do. Because the reality is, we're never going to be able to keep up with these kinds of changes if we aren't putting in place some systems that allow us to do the right things over time. This environment is going to constantly change, right? We have to find solutions that can help us outperform what we've done historically and make the situation better for all of the parties that are involved. It's absolutely possible to do that. We know the technology can be abused. If we do the work, we can make it so that we're getting the benefit from it, so that everyone is getting the benefit from it. And we have to adapt. We cannot ignore this AI situation. We have to take action. It's not enough to stand by the wayside. And if you have teachers that are in the same grade and one is using an AI detector and the other is not, and it's affecting their grades, that's not a good situation either. Let's team up. Let's work together, because there's so many opportunities that we can take advantage of with AI. It's practically limitless what we can do. And if you need ideas, let's have that conversation, right? I know that as a community we can solve this problem. So also let me hear from you, right? There's a lot of opportunities for learning. That's what we're about here at AI Mistakes. I want us to be making the mistakes that are going to be growth mistakes, using the AI to make ourselves better, to improve the situation. And that means that we have to be willing to try new things and test things out. Yeah, it's going to be hard to get this right out of the gate. I'll acknowledge that, right? But we can also build policies that are forgiving, right? We shouldn't ever have a once in you're out situation. I mean, so what if a student does use AI to write an assignment? How can we turn that into a mistake that can be learned from, instead of creating an impossible to overcome situation between the student and the teacher, or putting that student on an academic track that puts them in a difficult situation unnecessarily going forward? Let's use this technology to our advantage, and let's learn from each other as we do that. So I hope this has been useful. Go put AI to work. And yeah, I think there are ways to put it in the classroom. And I think it's absolutely possible to use AI without cheating. I know that when I use it every day at work, it's not cheating. I'm getting real work done and creating more value through the power of AI. And that's ultimately what we're here to do: exchange value, learn from each other, make society a better place. So, with that, go make some AI mistakes. We'll see you next time.